The heat had been worn to him. Earth Command classified Carthan 5 as temperamentally habitable, a term that sounded innocuous from a bureaucratic standpoint, but meant try not to die from sunstroke or sandstorms. During peak hours, the planet's surface temperature was high enough to warp unshielded metal between the two suns' blazing courses across the sky. However, Corporal Dean Mercer's position wasn't the worst. He had chased crystal spiders on Mir Delta and endured acid rains on Venla 9. Carthan 5 was a sauna in comparison. He also enjoyed the silence. In order to evade thermal detection and withstand windstorms, Outpost Theta was buried halfway into the dunes, with its dome low. 6 people, all research and recon staff, were housed there and were engaged in mapping the mineral composition of the Carthan deserts. The native Carthanians lived in the Zerenthian capital, which glistened beneath its crystalline domes 200 clicks away. On paper, relations with them were formal and cooperative. Although Dean had watched the programs, he had not had much contact with them. Tall, elegant creatures with metallic skins that ranged in color from gold to amethyst, always wearing robes that glistened like sunlight in liquid form. Dean had been working a 6-week shift for 3 weeks. On most days, he used his drone to wander the dunes, charting mineral-rich areas, looking for any indications of burrow beast migration, and scanning the terrain for tectonic activity. Large, blind predators that burrowing through the dunes like whales in water, the creatures were indigenous to the deeper sands. Although no one has yet worked out how to forecast them, the local researchers hypothesized that their movement patterns were related to electromagnetic anomalies. Dean just had one objective after 12 hours of data collection: a sand bath. It has been practiced for ages by the Carthanians. The tiny lattice of crystalline minerals that made up the desert sand on Carthan 5 was more than simply crushed rock. It reacted with sunlight to absorb and re-radiate low-frequency energy. Buried up to the neck, the experience was similar to a sauna and deep tissue massage for the entire body. Earth scientists studied it and found that it has minor anti-inflammatory and regenerative qualities. Whether it was psychosomatic didn't matter to Dean. He simply knew that nothing was more satisfying than taking off his exosuit and settling into warm, receptive sand after spending a day in it. He located his typical location, a natural wind shelter in a basin between 2 crescent dunes. The dunes were covered in deep shadows, as the suns had sunk low. The sun wouldn't burn your eyes, but the sand would still retain the warmth of the day. This was the golden hour. After taking off his costume, Dean excavated a little pit and lowered himself into it. The warmth enveloped him like a reassuring surge. With his eyes closed and his head thrown back, he let out a breath and let the silence carry him away, until it wasn't quiet anymore. Although it was too faint for most people to notice, Dean's recon training had made him sensitive to the change in the atmosphere. The moving brush, the shifting of sand, a shadow. He opened one eye. He almost gulped his tongue. A woman stood above him, framed by the twin suns as they set. An alien. No. Tall and radiant. Carthanian. She had violet-blue skin that shimmered slightly like a polished jewel. Metallic threads intertwined into long, white-silver hair, cascaded down her back. Intricate jewelry wrapped about her arms and neck, and she wore a translucent robe that showed more than it concealed. Signs of aristocracy, if he recalled the cultural briefings properly. She was also observing him. Her words, "You are unclothed." Dean snatched his bag. "This bathroom is private." "Area, I mean." Her head was cocked. "The sand belongs to no one. You can't just walk up on someone like that." I didn't move. I came by glider. He blinked. Indeed, on the dune's edge, a sleek Zerenthian vehicle glinted. He inquired, "Why are you here?" "I wish to join you." Dean gazed. "Join me?" She started taking off her robe. "Hey, whoa, whoa! No, this isn't how it operates." She lowered herself with royal grace as she stepped into the sand next to him. The minerals glittered as they adhered to her flesh. "Taking a sand bath together is a highly trusted custom among my people. Sometimes even closeness." Dean's face flushed. "Lady, I was just trying to relax." She gave a small smile. "I am Princess Ilyara." His mind froze. "Princess." "That is correct. You are the human outpost's Corporal Dean Mercer." He nodded slowly. "How do you know me?" "I've looked over your reports, your fortitude, your interest. I wanted to meet you when you were naturally at ease. This is more like a diplomatic ambush." She chuckled quietly. "This is more like a diplomatic ambush." She chuckled quietly. It had a melodic quality. "People are weird. Your body responds differently to what you say." Dean cast his gaze downward. Heat rose up his neck. "Could we just talk like normal people?" "Of course." Leaning back, she folded her legs beneath the sand. "Then let us talk." They did. For hours. They talked about their planets as the twin moons rose, illuminating the desert in silver and blue. Of Earth, with its cities, its cacophony, its oceans. About Carthan, its singing dunes, its wandering tribes, its sand and sun ceremonies. Dean was captivated and more relaxed, until the sand started to shake. He took a seat. "Did you feel that?" Ilyara gave a nod. "Burrow beast, juvenile. Too close." Dean grabbed his handgun. There were pulses of shaking in the ground underneath them. "Ilyara, get to the glider. Number I'll remain." "That's suicide." She held up a hand. Her fingertips started to pulse with energy. Then there was an explosion of sand behind them. A huge figure, with 6 meters of armored carapace, clicking mandibles and red eyeballs burst forth. Dean fired after rolling. It was scarcely slowed when the pulse bolt struck its leg. The shriek was a thunderous chorus of fury from the beast. "Move!" Dean yelled. Ilyara, however, was chanting. The surrounding air glistened. She started to emit sound waves that resonated with the sand. The burrow beast hesitated, seemingly perplexed. It gave a hiss. Over the dunes came another screech. Out of the crest exploded a larger form. The mom. As the juvenile withdrew, chirping obediently, Dean gazed. With massive limbs, the matriarch pounded the ground while hissing a low frequency that made Dean's chest tremble. Then, amazingly, they disappeared under the sand. Dean looked across at Ilyara. What the hell was that? "A lullaby," was all she said. "One our ancestors sang to tame the sandwalkers." With a sigh, Dean fell back into the sand. "You're out of your mind." She grinned. "Perhaps." They remained until the break of day. He got up when she did. He questioned, "What happens now?" Her words, "Now, you are part of the legend. The person who refused to be charmed by me. Who sang with our creatures and took a dip in our beach." "I didn't sing." Her voice was low as she drew close. "But you listened." Then she was gone. Her glider glinted off into the distance. When his tour came to an end a few weeks later, Dean was called, not back to Earth, but to the capital of Zerentia. A request. And maybe even more. Since a sand bath can occasionally be merely a bath. And occasionally, it marks the beginning of something that has the power to change entire worlds. Complete. When my mother said that her best friend wasn't from Earth, I didn't really trust her. When I was younger, I assumed it was just another of her grandiose stories. such as the one in which she said that she used only her voice and a malfunctioning translator to avert a galactic civil war. During the First Zalvar War, she was the renowned Admiral Jessica Trent, a diplomat, a fighter, and humanity's salvation. She was bigger than life to the galaxy. Until the day we buried her, she was just Mom to me. At that point, everything began to fall apart. On the day of her funeral, the sky was overcast. The weather lamented as well. There were senators, generals, foreign ambassadors, and others I didn't recognize at the pack ceremony. However, one figure was very noticeable. Tall. At the fringe of the crowd, silent and motionless, wrapped in a dark cloak. She refrained from crying. She remained silent. Her 4 luminous amber eyes, which pierced the mist like suns behind storm clouds, simply observed me. I ought to have been terrified. Rather, I was attracted to her. I made an effort to blend in with the walls at the reception later. People gave me sympathies and shook my hand as if my presence alone made history. It wasn't how I felt. I had the impression of a child posing as his mother. The woman came over to me at that point. Now she was near, 7 feet in height, elegant but muscular. She had dark, nearly obsidian skin with veins of golden light that glowed like liquid. Her face and neck were covered in tribal insignia. Gravity was her presence. Around her, the room seemed to settle down. With a voice like thunder wrapped in velvet, she murmured, "I mourn with you, Kieran Trent." "Am I familiar with you?" With caution, I asked. "You are aware of my name, or you've heard it anyway." "From the Cathari Dominion, I'm Varja. Your mom gave me the name Ja." I gasped. That name. That was a name I recognized. Ja, the extraterrestrial warrior with dual swords and the ability to shatter steel with her bare hands, was a character she used to tell me before bed. They always seemed like fairy tales to me. Varja remarked, "She was more than just my friend. In the battle, she was my sister. I have a blood debt to her." I also assured her that I will come back. "For you." "For myself." I blinked. She moved in closer. I had to raise my head to look her in the eye. "You've reached adulthood. You're prepared. I've arrived to declare you my mate." I let my drink fall. I demanded answers while pacing the mansion's balcony for the next hour. She silently followed me until I turned to look at her. "What is meant by claim? I am not some sort of reward." "Obviously not," she stated coolly. "You leave a legacy. During the siege of Theta Prime, your mother and I made a deal. She carried me through enemy lines for days and saved my life. Such a debt is considered holy in my society. She prayed for patience instead of honor or wealth." "Hold on for him," she urged. "Come back when he's grown. Keep him safe. Ask for his heart and give him yours." My mind whirled. "You're telling me an alien marriage arranged by my mother? Not planned. Presented a selection. I would go if you said no. However, she thought we would be correct. I am a human being." She put a palm over her chest and murmured, "And I am Cathari. My population is declining. Our genetic lines don't work. We looked for decades. You have compatible DNA. One of the few people whose biology can blend with ours is you. I'm some rare breeding stock then." I lost my temper. She grimaced. "Number, that is not all that you are. Kieran, I have observed you. Your generosity. Your fire. Your isolation. What your mother saw, I see. You've been watching me? Keeping you safe," she added quietly. "Awaiting." She gave me a tiny luminous orb that evening. Her message is this: "Just for you." I turned it on. The sound of my mother's voice filled the room. "Hey, little one. I'm Stardust by now if you're listening. Don't be angry. I made decisions for you. For her. Varja is more than just a longtime companion. She is strong, devoted, and more intelligent than she appears. Kieran, I didn't want you to be by alone. I could never protect you the way she can. She possesses the strength I've always desired in you. She will also wait. She waits all the time. Go with her if you share her sentiments. Love her. Have faith in her. If not, leave. She will comprehend. However, I hope you don't. The tape continued to reverberate in my chest while I stood motionless. Varja didn't encourage me. She just waited. I accompanied her. Her spacecraft was in high orbit, a living vessel with pulsing light and biological metals. As we boarded, the Cathari crew bowed. They declared, "You are the mate-bearer." "All right," I muttered. All right," I muttered. "That's strange." She genuinely chuckled. Strange, resonant, low. "They shouldn't worship you," I said. "Next time, maybe say it louder." Trials are necessary for Cathari bonding. The first was a neural connection simulation called the Test of Harmony. Our brains were connected. I seen her past. Blood and fire. Her body shattered. My mother bearing her through toxic winds and storms. My birthdays alone. My mother's departure when duty called. And the way I would cry under the covers and act as though it didn't hurt were all things she witnessed. She touched my face as we parted ways. She said, "You were strong always, even if you believed you weren't." The trial of survival followed. They left us without any technology on a rainforest moon. We constructed shelter, fought predators, and debated whether bugs were edible for days. She acquired fire-making skills. I discovered how to break a 10-legged razor beast's neck. We got into a fight. We chuckled. She questioned, "Why do humans kiss?" as we gazed up at the twin moons one evening. "It's a way to show that you care." She stated, "We scent mark." "I want to try, though." I then gave her a kiss. It was tentative at first. Then, however, something became clear. It wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't odd. It seemed as though gravity had finally shifted. Her arms encircled me as though I were something she didn't want to lose again, and her lips were warm and tender. The Cathari crew applauded the following day. Clapped literally. It appears that bioluminescent markings are left by Cathari kisses. Where I touched her, her jaw shone. It was referred to as a declaration of courtship by the high priest. "I just gave her a kiss," I objected. "That is how we make a ring," Varja declared with pride. Fantastic. Now I was accidentally engaged. However, I didn't mind. I became more aware of the warrior's soul the more time I spent with her. She was more than simply tradition and muscle. She was inquisitive. She was frightened of scary films but pretended not to be. Fascinated by peanut butter and obsessed with earth music. She paid attention. She discovered. She made an effort. I began to fall. The galaxy then overtook us. The planet called on us to come back. Unions between humans and aliens were still controversial. I was labeled a traitor by news networks. Signs were waved by protesters. "They must not take our men," someone cried out. "She didn't take me," I murmured, standing in front of the Galactic Accord. She was my choice. She respected me enough to wait 20 years. How many people are able to claim that about their own species? Politics, however, didn't wait for love. The Queen of Cathari had passed away. Blood and bond passed the throne, and Varja, who was bound to me, came next. They remarked, "She cannot lead without a mate. Union is demanded by the throne." Varja looked over at me. "I'll give it up if you want me to. Losing you would be worse than losing a crown." And I saw what my mother saw in that instant. "No," I replied. "We are united. Always." Under twin moonlight, our wedding took place atop a floating spire. My mother's name was engraved on the ceremonial armor she wore. I had a cloak with Cathari runes stitched on it. I answered, "I bind to you, Varja." Not out of obligation. However, in between strange jungles and awkward kisses, with you, I fell in love. She answered, "And I bind to you, Kieran Trent." Not for influence, not for procreation. However, since your soul completed mine. The stars changed when we touched. A ripple of psychic energy swept through the galaxy. Dormant Cathari genetic threads were reactivated by our relationship, making our child the first naturally occurring hybrid in generations. She was born beaming a year later. Optimistic. 4 tiny, golden eyes. She cooed as she put one small hand around my finger. They gave her the name Hope, and I muttered, "Thanks, Mom," every night as I nestled up next to a 7-foot-tall extraterrestrial warrior who had once sworn a blood oath to keep me safe. You were correct. Varja would flaunt his keen teeth in a smile. You are fortunate that I am so alluring. Perhaps she was. On every planet, in every language. She had me. She was also mine. Forever.